So the future of the sharing economy is a sort of wild, still partly Wild West and partly really taking greater shape. More and more we are looking at the sharing economy becoming an increasingly important piece of the overall economic pie. It's been doing that for several years, but we are seeing a real kind of inflection point. And I say that when we look at what's happening with startups, what's happening with established companies, and what's happening with policymakers. So more and more, ultimately, I think we won't talk so much about the sharing economy or the collaborative economy or the on-demand economy. It'll all just be part of the economy. But what we're seeing, very big picture, is more of everything. So we're seeing more startups enter the space. We're seeing much more traditional company participation. And I can come back to that in a minute. And then we're seeing policymakers, regulators, public sector folks finally starting to get a grasp on what's going on, both opportunities for how the sharing economy can help build cities better, but also some of the blind spots around what happens when you don't have appropriate regulations in place. So I think on the startup side, we're looking, it's interesting, both startups that are involved in the core aspect of sharing or access, a lot of those more and more are coming from outside the US. So we continue to see the global growth, but I get emails from startups pretty much weekly, and more of those are still coming from other countries, or I would say elsewhere in the United States, beyond Silicon Valley also. Also, we're seeing more of what I call enablers. So these are the startups that aren't focused necessarily on, I'm going to share a car or an office or whatever, but I'm going to enable sharing to happen more easily. So insurance is a really big topic of growth and where you're seeing a lot more activity. Payments and financial services that kind of enable this shared economy, and sometimes things like tax solutions and that sort of thing. So that's been really interesting. And then on the traditional company side, really can't understate enough how much the old and new economy are starting to converge. And this is everything from, we're seeing a lot of clothing and fashion companies get involved and start offering access to a wardrobe rather than owning all your clothes. Obviously, we're seeing a lot in terms of mobility and homes and real estate and office space and that sort of thing. But we're also starting to see some of these other ecosystems, particularly around kids, around elderly. There's a whole sharing economy that's evolving around the elderly as people are starting to rethink retirement. So it just kind of blossoms out from there. But I would say net, the projections I had 5 years ago around this space is going to grow have been met, but in some ways exceeded. And the future looks equally robust.